It had been building for months, the tension, the whispers, the anticipation. Everyone knew something big was coming. But no one had expected Pam Bondi to take the stage and destroy Obama's carefully crafted public image so completely. As the cameras flashed and reporters scrambled for their questions, Pam stood at the podium, her face calm, but her eyes burning with a determined fire. "This is it," she began, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. "After years of watching the same old tactics, the same lies, the same hypocrisy, I'm here to tell you, it's over for him." The room went silent. It wasn't just the words she said, but the weight behind them. Pam Bondi, the sharp, no-nonsense prosecutor, was stepping into the spotlight to speak out against the former president. Everyone knew it wasn't just politics anymore, it was personal. Pam leaned forward, locking eyes with the crowd. Her voice grew more intense, each word hitting harder than the last. "For years, Obama has portrayed himself as a champion of the people, someone who had the answers, someone who stood for change. But what have we seen? A man who used his position for personal gain, who sold out the American people to push his own agenda. I won't sit back anymore and let this charade continue." The room was buzzing now, reporters scribbling furiously. Pam wasn't just attacking Obama's policies, she was attacking his very character, dismantling everything he'd built in a matter of minutes. "People are waking up," Pam continued, her voice rising in fury. "They're realizing that the man they once trusted lied to them. And I'm here to say, enough is enough. We've had enough of the lies, enough of the manipulation, enough of the Obama legacy. It's time for the truth to come out." The tension in the room was palpable as Pam's words echoed through the hall. She wasn't pulling any punches, and it was clear she was just getting started. "Let's talk about the real Obama," Pam continued, her voice icy now, each word deliberate. "The man who turned a blind eye to corruption while pretending to be a savior. The man who promised transparency but delivered backroom deals and cover-ups. The man who, when faced with accountability, would rather deflect, manipulate, and run from the truth." The reporters' pens couldn't move fast enough as they scrambled to capture every word. But Pam wasn't done yet. She straightened up, her posture unwavering, and let her final statement drop like a bomb. "This is not just about politics anymore. This is about holding someone accountable for what they've done to this country. Obama's time is up. And trust me, the reckoning is coming. It's over for him." A stunned silence followed her words. The gravity of her statement hung in the air, leaving the crowd on edge, waiting for what would come next. The shock in the room was undeniable, but Pam wasn't concerned with the stunned silence. She had made her point, and she knew that the ripple effect of her words would be felt far beyond the walls of the conference room. As she stepped away from the podium, her eyes scanned the room, meeting the gazes of the reporters who were still processing what they had just heard. She knew the media would spin her words in every direction, but there was one thing they couldn't ignore, the truth she had just unleashed. Obama's political allies, who had once praised him as the savior of a generation, were now scrambling to distance themselves. The phones were ringing, texts flooding in. The world had just shifted, and everyone was trying to understand what had just happened. Pam Bondi had just torn down the facade. She turned toward the door, confident that what she had set in motion was only the beginning. There were still more battles ahead, but today, in that moment, Pam had delivered the fatal blow. As Pam walked out of the room, her phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from political allies, legal teams, and even a few surprise sources flooded her inbox. She glanced down, only reading a few before slipping the phone into her pocket. She didn't need the distraction. This was bigger than anything that could be said over text. By the time she reached her car, the news was already breaking across every major outlet. Clips of her speech were replaying on a loop, with analysts scrambling to dissect every word. But Pam knew something most of them didn't: this was just the beginning. Her statement had not only shaken the political world, but it had cracked open a door that had remained closed for far too long. People were talking about Obama's legacy, but they were also starting to question it. And Pam wasn't about to let that momentum slip away. She made a quick call to her team, setting up her next move. A press conference, a strategic media blitz. She wasn't just going to leave Obama on the defensive, she was going to push him into a corner he couldn't escape. This is just the start, Pam muttered to herself, her resolve hardening with each passing second. The next chapter in the battle for the future of American politics had just begun, and Pam Bondi was leading the charge. The following days were a whirlwind. Media outlets, pundits, and analysts were all consumed by the fallout from Pam's remarks. Everywhere she went, people were whispering about what she had said, and, more importantly, what it meant for Obama's once untouchable legacy. Pam had become the most powerful voice in the room, the one everyone was listening to. And she wasn't about to waste that influence. She spent the next few days meeting with political allies, strategizing the next phase of the battle. But behind closed doors, things were heating up. Obama's team was scrambling, trying to control the damage. The former president, once hailed as a political genius, was now fighting to keep his image intact, but the cracks were starting to show. Pam's words had struck deep. His allies were distancing themselves. Key supporters, who had once been fiercely loyal, were now expressing doubts. The pressure was mounting on Obama from all sides, and Pam knew the walls were closing in. In a meeting with her closest advisors, Pam laid out the plan. "We're going to keep the pressure on," she said with a deadly calm. "We have the momentum now. We need to keep it. Every single day, we hammer at the truth. Every day, we expose more of the lies. And every day, we remind America what they've forgotten: Obama is not the savior he pretended to be." Her advisors nodded, fully on board. They knew the risks, but they also knew the power of what Pam was doing. She was more than just a prosecutor now, she was a political force. The world had seen Obama's downfall begin, and they were waiting for the next move. Pam wasn't about to disappoint. Pam's strategy was clear, and the impact was undeniable. As the days passed, her relentless pursuit of Obama's weaknesses only amplified. The media cycle had become consumed with her every word. The opposition was growing desperate, and yet, no one could anticipate how far Pam would push. One evening, she sat in a meeting with key political figures, plotting the final phase of the campaign. A looming scandal, one tied directly to Obama's administration, was on the verge of breaking wide open. She had insider sources ready to spill the truth, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. "We've got the smoking gun," Pam said, her voice low, yet fierce. "We've already exposed cracks in his legacy. Now, we take it all the way. This is the final piece." Her team was ready, their eyes locked on the strategy ahead. They knew this would make or break everything. If Pam executed this flawlessly, Obama's political career could be finished. The scandal would destroy his carefully curated image once and for all. The clock was ticking. By the time the news broke the next morning, the scandal was out in full force. Details of covert dealings, shady deals, and the kind of corruption Obama had worked hard to cover up were now exposed for the world to see. The media frenzy was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Obama's reputation was hanging by a thread. Pam sat back, watching the chaos unfold. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about justice. It was about truth. And she had just delivered the final blow. The fallout from the scandal was swift and unforgiving. Obama's public image, once polished to perfection, was now shattered. The media, once loyal to the former president, turned on him with a vengeance. Headlines screamed of betrayal, corruption, and dishonesty. The airwaves buzzed with accusations, each more damning than the last. Pam, however, remained composed. She had been waiting for this moment, for the world to see the man behind the curtain. The next step was critical. She needed to ensure that this wasn't just another scandal that would fade into the background. Obama's downfall needed to be permanent. "I told you it was over for him," Pam said to her closest allies, her voice filled with satisfaction. "Now, we make sure he can't come back. We take this to the next level." Pam was already preparing her next move. A series of high-profile interviews were scheduled, where she would double down on the accusations, providing more evidence, more context. She knew the media would demand answers, and she was more than ready to deliver. As the weeks dragged on, Obama's world crumbled. Key supporters abandoned him, one by one. Legal battles loomed large on the horizon. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from within his own party. Pam's relentless pursuit had driven a wedge between Obama and the very people who had once backed him without question. And as Obama's career seemed to unravel, Pam remained a towering figure in the political landscape. Her name was now synonymous with accountability and strength, someone who had taken on one of the most powerful men in the world, and won. The months following the scandal were nothing short of brutal for Obama. The legal ramifications were mounting, and his ability to maintain any semblance of political influence was rapidly diminishing. Pam Bondi had accomplished what few had dared to dream. Obama, once the beacon of hope for millions, was now a figure of disdain, his every move scrutinized under a microscope. But Pam wasn't done yet. As Obama's political career crumbled, Pam seized the opportunity to push forward with her own agenda. She had become more than just a critic, she was a force to be reckoned with, and her influence was growing every day. In closed-door meetings, she began positioning herself for a greater role in the future of the nation. "It's not just about tearing him down," Pam said to her team, her voice low but resolute. "It's about building something stronger in its place." With Obama all but sidelined, Pam now had the chance to take on new battles. She was already eyeing key Senate races, making plans to solidify her position as a national leader. Her supporters rallied behind her, and the political establishment was beginning to take notice of the woman who had taken down one of the most powerful figures in modern history. But as she plotted her next moves, Pam also knew that Obama's downfall was only the beginning of a much larger war, one that would redefine the future of American politics. As Pam Bondi looked to the future, her eyes were clear, her strategy unshakable. Obama's legacy had been dismantled, and the political world was still reeling from the shockwaves she had set in motion. But she knew this was just the first step in a much larger battle, one that would shape the direction of the country for years to come. Pam's rise had been swift, and with it, she had earned the respect, and fear, of her opponents. The media, once skeptical of her power, now understood that she wasn't just a politician. She was a force of nature. "America deserves better," Pam said in her final public speech about Obama's downfall. "It deserves leadership that doesn't lie, that doesn't manipulate. We deserve honesty, accountability, and integrity. And if it's up to me, that's exactly what we're going to get." The applause was deafening, but Pam remained calm. She had proven her point, and now, with Obama effectively sidelined, she was poised to take on the next challenge. Her name was already at the top of every political strategist's list for the future of the country, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind that Pam Bondi would be a central figure in the years ahead. But as her rivals plotted their own comebacks, they all knew one undeniable truth: Pam Bondi was not someone to be underestimated. And with that, Pam took the first step toward the next chapter of her political career, a chapter where the rules would no longer be the same. Because in the end, she hadn't just defeated Obama. She had rewritten the playbook entirely.